Listen to me. Somebody today needs to hear this. Faith is greater than fear. See, fear is the #1 dream killer. Fear has stopped more people than failure ever has. You worried about what might happen, what could go wrong, who might laugh at you, who might not support you. But here's the truth. God did not give you a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. Fear is man-made. Faith is God-given. Fear shows up first, but faith finishes last. Fear is always going to knock at your door. Fear says you can sick do it. You ain't sick good enough. What if you fail? The faith whispers, what if you win? What if this is the moment God been preparing you for? What if everything you prayed for is right on the other side of that fear? Every blessing I ever got in my life came when I chose faith over fear. When I walked out on that stage, when I made that phone call, when I left that job that was draining me, fear was there, but faith carried me. Fear is always going to be the first thing that shows up in your life. That's just how the enemy works. Fear is loud, it's quick, and it tries to show up before faith even gets a chance to walk in. The moment you think about a new idea, the second you start dreaming about something bigger, the very instant you even whisper a prayer for more, fear comes rushing in. It's like a neighbor who always beats you to your own front door. Soon as you grab the doorknob, fear already standing there like, hey, you sure you want to do this? You sure you're good enough? You sure this ain't going to end in embarrassment? Now, let me tell you something. Fear's fast, but it ain't strong. It shows up first, but it never has the last word. Faith always finishes the race. See, fear can get in your ear, it can get in your mind, it can even make your knees shake, but faith, that's what gets your feet moving. Faith is the thing that says, yeah, I see the danger, I see the unknown, but I'm still going forward because I believe God already went ahead of me and made a way. Every single blessing I've ever received, every big break I ever had in my career came when I decided to let faith finish the race instead of fear. I remember the first time I walked on stage as a stand-up comedian. Man, let me tell you, fear was right there in the front row waiting on me. My hands were sweating, my voice was shaking, and the only thing fear kept saying was, you're gonna bomb, you ain't funny enough, you ain't ready. But faith, that little quiet voice inside me kept saying, just step out there, tell that first joke, trust that what God put in you is enough. And guess what? I stepped out there, and the laughter came, the blessing came, the career came, not because fear left me alone, but because I let faith finish the race. See, fear don't ever fully disappear. Don't let nobody lie to you about that. Even today, I still feel fear. Fear of failure, fear of letting people down, fear of stepping into something new. But the difference now is that I understand fear's position. Fear can start the conversation, but it cannot end it. Fear is the starter, but faith is the finisher. When you're facing a big decision, fear is always going to present the worst case scenario. Fear will play every bad movie in your mind. Fear will show you the rejection letter before you even apply. Fear will show you the business closing before you even open the doors. Fear will show you heartbreak before you even fall in love. But faith shows you the other side. Faith shows you the possibility. Faith says, what if this is the thing that changes your life forever? What if this is the door that leads you to everything you've been praying for? Let me tell you, the enemy uses fear because it's quick. It can shut people down before they even begin. Some of y'all listening to me right now, you haven't even started that dream. Not because you ain't got the talent, not because you ain't got the resources, but simply because fear showed up before faith had a chance to speak. You're standing at the starting line and fear has already convinced you that you lost the race. But let me remind you of something. Fear might come first, but it never wins. Faith always wins. Faith might walk a little slower. It might not scream as loud, but faith has endurance. Fear will fade when you take action, but faith will grow stronger every single step you take. And before you know it, faith is carrying you past the finish line, into places fear swore you would never reach. So the next time fear shows up, don't nest panic, don't nest quit. Just smile and say, I know you came to the party early, but faith is the one that's gonna take me home. 2, fear wants you stuck, faith wants you moving. Fear is comfortable. It tells you, stay right here, don't best take that risk, don't best step out. But listen, nothing grows in comfort, nothing changes when you stay the same. Faith is action. Faith says take that first step, even if you can't see the whole staircase. You don't need the whole blueprint. You just need to trust that God got the rest of the plan. Fear is one of the most paralyzing forces you'll ever face in your life. Fear has one job: to keep you stuck, to keep you frozen in the same spot, year after year, telling yourself, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe one day. Fear convinces you that staying where you are is safer than trying something new. It whispers, don't take that step. Don't risk looking foolish. Don't put yourself out there. Just stay right here. Now here's the problem with that. Nothing grows when you stay where you are. Nothing changes when you stay still. Fear makes you comfortable, but comfort is dangerous when you've got big dreams. Comfort is dangerous when God has placed something in your spirit that's bigger than the place you're in right now. See, God didn't create you to stay stuck. He didn't design you to sit in the same spot, living the same life, with the same excuses year after year. He designed you to move. He designed you to progress. He designed you to go from glory to glory, level to level. Faith, on the other hand, is motion. Faith says, take that step. You don't have to see the whole road. Just take one step and trust that the rest will be revealed. Faith doesn't require you to have all the answers. Faith doesn't need a perfect plan. Faith just needs you to move. Every big change in my life happened because I moved when fear told me not to. When I quit my safe job to chase stand-up comedy, fear told me I was crazy. Fear told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Fear wanted me stuck in a paycheck-to-paycheck life, miserable but safe. But faith said, move. Faith said, you weren't born just to survive, you were born to thrive. And I had to make a decision: stay stuck where fear wanted me, or move into what faith was calling me to. You know what's interesting? Fear always dresses itself up as wisdom. Fear will try to convince you it's being practical. Fear will say, just wait a little longer, just save a little more money, just get a little more experience. And while you're waiting, years pass by. Dreams die in waiting rooms. But faith doesn't sound practical. Faith says, step out before you're ready. Trust before you see results. Walk into that unknown territory, because that's where your blessing is waiting. Some of y'all been sitting on a dream for 5, 10, maybe even 20 years, and you keep telling yourself you're waiting on the right time. Let me break it to you. There is no perfect time. If you're waiting on fear to leave before you move, you're going to be waiting forever. The right time is when faith nudges you and says, move. The right time is when you feel that pull in your spirit, that voice saying, this ain't all there is. There's more for you if you're willing to step out. Fear says you can't. Faith says you can. Fear says stay. Faith says go. Fear says play it safe. Faith says risk it, because God's got you. Which one are you listening to? Movement is life. Stagnation is death. You were not designed to be still forever. Even water, when it stands still too long, it grows stale. It breeds mosquitoes. But when water flows, it brings life. Your life is no different. When you move, when you keep walking by faith, opportunities flow, blessings flow, growth flows. But if you stay stuck, all you're doing is letting fear rob you of what could have been. So I'm telling you today, don't let fear lock you in the same place. Don't let fear write your story. Choose faith. Take the step, even if it's small, even if you're trembling, even if you don't know what's next. Move, because faith moves mountains, but only if you move first. Faith builds, fear breaks. Fear breaks your confidence. Fear breaks your dreams. Fear breaks your future before it even begins. But faith builds. Faith builds courage. Faith builds vision. Faith builds legacy. Ask yourself, what's building you right now? Is fear building walls around your life, or is faith building doors you can walk through? Fear is a destroyer. It don't matter how big your dream is, how much talent you got, or how much potential God placed inside of you. Fear can break it all down before it even has a chance to grow. Fear breaks your confidence. Fear breaks your focus. Fear breaks your courage. Fear is a wrecking ball that smashes everything God is trying to build in your life. And the worst part is, fear don't even have to be real. Most of the time, it's just a story we've told ourselves over and over again until we believe it. Fear breaks you with illusions. But faith is a builder. Faith don't destroy, it constructs. Faith is a carpenter. Faith picks up the broken pieces of your life and says, I can make something out of this. Faith takes that failure and builds wisdom. Faith takes that setback and builds strength. Faith takes rejection and builds resilience. Faith takes nothing and builds something. Now let me be real with you. When I was broke living in my car, I thought my life was shattered. Fear kept telling me, Steve, you ain't never gonna get out of this. This is it. You messed up too many times. Nobody's coming to help you. Fear was trying to break me down into nothing. But my faith said, hold on. God is still writing your story. This is just a chapter, not the whole book. And little by little, my faith started building me back up. Faith built me a vision when all I could see was struggle. Faith built me courage to get back on that stage when I felt like quitting. Faith built me a future when my present looked like the end. And let me tell you something. If faith can build me from a car with no money to the life I'm living now, it can build you too. Fear breaks your self-esteem. You start believing you ain't good enough. You don't deserve better. You'll never be more than what you are right now. That's fear talking. And every time you let it speak into your life, it tears down another brick in the foundation of who you are. That's why some of y'all feel empty, not because you don't have the dream, but because fear done stripped you of your belief. But faith builds brick by brick. Faith don't need to see the whole house finished. Faith says, let's just lay this one brick today, and tomorrow we'll lay another. Faith is patient, steady, and strong. It doesn't collapse under pressure. And when life throws storms at you, when trouble comes knocking, it's your faith that keeps the structure standing. Think about it like this. Fear breaks down doors that God meant for you to walk through, but faith builds new doors where none existed. Fear breaks your legs so you can't run, but faith builds wings so you can fly. Fear breaks relationships, but faith builds restoration. Fear breaks your mind with worry, but faith builds peace. Some of you are living in ruins right now because you let fear do all the talking. You've been broken down by doubt, broken down by past failures, broken down by people who told you what you can't do. But let me remind you, if you still got faith, you still got building materials. As long as you got faith, you can rebuild what fear tried to destroy. So when fear tries to break you down, you gotta fight back with faith. You gotta declare, I am not my mistakes. I am not my failures. I am not what fear says I am. I am what faith says I am. I am strong. I am chosen. I am blessed. I am capable. Don't let fear break what God put in you. Let faith build it into something bigger than you ever imagined. Because at the end of the day, fear leaves you empty, but faith leaves you full. Fear tears down, but faith raises up. Fear destroys, but faith creates. And if you're going to live the life God promised you, you can't live broken. You got to let faith do the building. For my own story. Let me tell you, when I was living in that car, broke, hungry, embarrassed, fear told me I wasn't going to make it. Fear told me to quit. But faith told me that God didn't bring me this far to leave me. I was scared, yes, but I was more faithful than fearful. I chose to believe that God had a better plan than what I was living. And guess what? He did. I'll be honest with you. This whole thing I'm talking about, faith being greater than fear, it ain't something I just read in a book. This is my real life. This is my own story. And maybe when you hear it, you'll see that if faith worked for me, it can work for you too. There was a time in my life where I had nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean nothing. No money, no house, no backup plan. I was living out of my car. I can still remember the smell of that old car, the way I'd fold up my clothes and try to make a pillow out of them at night, the way hunger used to gnaw at my stomach until I thought I couldn't take it anymore. And fear was right there with me. Fear was loud. It kept saying, this is the end for you. This is as far as you go. You messed up too many times. Nobody's gonna come save you. You should give up. And I'll tell you something, it would have been easy to believe fear because everything I could see around me backed it up. I didn't have success. I didn't have comfort. I didn't have proof that things were gonna turn around. But what I did have was faith. And sometimes faith is the only thing you've got to hold on to when everything else looks like it's falling apart. I remember sitting in that car one night, crying, praying, asking God why my life looked like this. And in the middle of my pain, faith whispered something to me. It didn't shout. It didn't give me a 5-year plan. It didn't promise me that tomorrow everything would change. All it said was, this is not the end. I got more for you. Trust me. That was all I needed to hear. See, fear wanted me stuck in that car forever. Fear wanted me to believe that being broke, being homeless, being humiliated was all I was ever gonna be. But faith gave me just enough courage to keep moving, to keep trying, to keep standing on stage, even when I bombed, to keep chasing opportunities, even when doors slammed in my face. There were nights I doubted myself. There were mornings I thought about giving up. But every single time, faith reminded me that God hadn't brought me this far to leave me. That call wasn't my destination. It was just a stop on the journey. And because I chose to believe that, because I chose to lean on faith instead of folding under fear, I walked into blessings bigger than anything I could have dreamed of. If I had let fear run my life, you would have never heard of Steve Harvey. I'd still be stuck in that car, still broken, still lost. Fear would have kept me down, but faith lifted me up. Faith built me into the man I am today. Faith gave me a career, a family, a purpose, a platform. Faith gave me the chance to stand here and talk to you. And here's the part I really want you to understand. I ain't special. I don't have some secret ingredient that you don't. The same God that showed up for me is the same God that'll show up for you. The same faith that carried me out of my lowest moment can carry you out of yours. So when I stand here and say faith is greater than fear, I ain't saying it because it sounds good. I'm saying it because I've lived it. I've been at the bottom. I've been scared, broken, and hopeless, but I chose faith, and faith took me places fear could never touch. And if you choose faith today, if you decide to believe just a little bit more than you fear, you'll look back one day and realize that what was meant to break you actually built you. 5. Fear speaks loud. Faith works quiet. Fear will scream in your ear. It'll make you panic. It'll keep you up at night. But faith works in silence. Faith says, be still and know. Faith don't need to be loud because it already knows who's in control. If you let fear guide you, you'll quit before you even start. But if you let faith guide you, you'll walk into doors you never thought possible. Fear is always loud. It's noisy, it's in your face, it screams in your ear. The second you try to step into something new, fear comes running with the megaphone. You're not ready, you don't have enough. What if you fail? What if they laugh at you? Fear don't ever whisper. It wants to make sure you hear it clear and strong. It wants to shake your confidence before you even take a step. And that's why so many people stop. They hear the loud voice of fear, and because it's so constant, so aggressive, they mistake it for truth. But let me tell you, just because fear is loud don't mean it's right. Noise don't equal truth. Fear yells because it's weak. It yells because it knows that if you slow down enough to listen to faith, you'll realize it don't stand a chance. Faith, on the other hand, is quiet. Faith doesn't need to scream. Faith doesn't need to argue with you or bully you. Faith whispers, it nudges. It says, go ahead, take the step. God is with you. Don't be afraid. Faith is calm, steady, patient. It's like a soft voice in the middle of a storm. The problem is, most of us are tuned in to the noise. We're so used to hearing fear shout that we don't know how to hear faith whisper. That's why you gotta learn to be still sometimes. You gotta learn to cut off the distractions, cut off the negativity, and quiet your spirit so you can hear that small voice of faith. I'll give you an example. When I first got into television, I was terrified. Fear was in my head saying, Steve, you're a comedian, not a host. You're gonna mess this up. They're gonna see you don't belong here. And man, fear was loud. Every day before I walked onto that set, I could hear it screaming at me. But faith didn't yell. Faith just kept saying, you belong here. God opened this door for you. Walk through it. I had to make a choice. Would I let the loud voice of fear stop me, or would I trust the quiet confidence of faith? And every time I chose faith, I discovered something powerful. Fear shuts up when you move forward anyway. Fear may be loud before you act, but once you step into faith, its voice starts to fade. See, faith is like an anchor. It don't need to make a lot of noise because it already knows it's holding you steady. Fear is like thunder. It makes a lot of sound, but it can't stop the rain from falling. Faith is what keeps you grounded. Faith is what gives you peace in chaos. Faith don't have to brag because it already knows the outcome. Some of you keep waiting for faith to shout over your fear, but that's not how it works. Faith is not going to compete with fear. Faith already knows it's stronger. Faith already knows the victory is won. What you got to do is tune your ear to it. Stop giving all your attention to the noise of fear and start trusting the stillness of faith. Think about the moments in your life when you felt peace, even when things were falling apart. That was faith. Think about when you had no idea how something was going to work out, but deep down you just knew it would. That was faith. It didn't need to scream. It didn't need to broadcast itself. It just quietly worked in the background, guiding you, building you, protecting you. So the next time fear gets loud in your life, don't panic. Don't assume it means stop. Don't let the volume fool you. Just lean into the quiet, because faith might not raise its voice, but it always keeps its promise. Fear may shout, but faith delivers. 6. Don said, let fear define you. Fear says you're your mistakes. Fear says you're your failures. Fear says you're not worthy. But faith says you're chosen. Faith says you're loved. Faith says you're forgiven. Faith says you're destined. You gotta decide which voice you're gonna listen to. One of the most dangerous things you can ever do in life is let fear define who you are. See, fear don't just want to stop you from doing things. It wants to label you. It wants to stick a name tag on you and say, this is who you are. You're the one who failed. You're the one who quit. You're the one who wasn't good enough. Fear wants to shape your identity so that every decision you make, every thought you think, and every dream you dream is filtered through its lies. And a lot of folks don't even realize it's happening. You go through one bad experience and fear says, that's you now. You mess up one time. And fear says, see, you're a failure. That's who you are. You go through one heartbreak and fear says you're unlovable. That's just your story. And if you believe it long enough, you start living like it's true. But let me tell you something. Fear is a liar. Fear is a thief. It will rob you of your true identity if you let it. You are not your mistakes. You are not your failures. You are not your setbacks. You are not the worst thing that ever happened to you. You are more than all of that. You are who God says you are. And God says you are chosen, loved, equipped, and destined for greatness. When I was younger, I let fear try to define me too. Fear told me I was just a poor kid from Cleveland, that I wasn't smart enough, that I wasn't talented enough, that I wasn't worthy enough to have big dreams. Fear told me to stay in my lane, to be realistic, to lower my expectations. And for a while, I almost believed it. But then faith stepped in and reminded me, Steve, you are more than what fear says you are. You're not just a statistic. You're not just your past. You're a child of God. And you've been given gifts that can change your life and other people's lives too. That's when I realized something powerful. If you let fear define you, you will live beneath your potential for the rest of your life. But if you let faith define you, you will rise above everything that was meant to hold you down. Fear says you can't. Faith says you can. Fear says you're stuck. Faith says you're free. Fear says this is the end. Faith says this is just the beginning. I meet people all the time who are living out an identity fear gave them years ago. Somebody told them they weren't good enough, and they believed it. Somebody walked out on them, and they believed they weren't lovable. Somebody laughed at their dream, and they believed they weren't capable. That's the trick of fear. It wants to shrink you down to the size of your doubts. But hear me clearly. You don't have to accept that definition. You can choose right now to redefine yourself through faith. You can stand up and declare, I am not what fear says I am. I am not broken. I am not a failure. I am not forgotten. I am strong. I am worthy. I am blessed. I am chosen. Don't let fear write the story of your life. Don't let fear paint the picture of who you are. Let faith do that. Because faith don't just see you where you are. It sees where you're going. Faith don't just see your past. It sees your future. Faith don't just see your scars. It sees your healing. And once you start living out of faith instead of fear, you'll discover something incredible. You were never meant to be defined by your worst moment. You were always meant to be defined by God's promise. 7, the power of what if. Fear says, what if I fail? Faith says, what if I fly? Fear says, what if they laugh at me? Faith says, what if they respect me? Fear says, what if I lose everything? Faith says, what if I gain everything I've been praying for? 2 little words have the power to shape your whole life. What if? And the way you answer that question determines whether you live in fear or whether you live in faith. Because fear has its own version of what if, and faith has its own version too. Fear says, what if I fail? What if people laugh at me? What if I lose everything? But faith flips it and says, what if I succeed? What if they cheer me on? What if I gain more than I ever dreamed of? The problem is, most people spend their lives listening to fear's version. That's why they never try. That's why they never step out. That's why they bury their dreams. Fear says, what if you fall flat on your face? And instead of answering back with faith, they freeze. They let the negative what ifs decide their future. I've had a lot of what if moments in my life. When I quit my job to chase comedy, fear was screaming, what if you bomb? What if nobody laughs? What if you end up broke? And you know what? Some of those things happen. I did bomb. I did struggle. I did end up broke for a season. But faith was asking me a different question. Steve, what if this is the path that leads you to your destiny? What if this is the door that opens the life you've been praying for? What if this is the one decision that changes everything? And guess what? That's exactly what it was. See, both fear and faith are asking you to believe in something you can't see yet. Fear wants you to believe in defeat before it even happens. Faith wants you to believe in victory before it shows up. The choice is yours. Which what if are you going to feed? I know some of you listening right now are stuck because of the what ifs. You've been carrying a dream in your heart for years, but fear keeps whispering, what if you're not smart enough? What if people reject you? What if it doesn't work out? But let me ask you this, what if it does? What if the business succeeds? What if the book sells? What if the song touches millions? What if the risk you're afraid to take is the exact thing that unlocks your breakthrough? You got to flip the question. Every time fear throws a negative what if at you, throw a positive one back. Fear says, what if you fail? Faith says, what if I learn something that gets me closer to success? Fear says, what if they laugh at me? Faith says, what if they get inspired by me? Fear says, what if I lose everything? Faith says, what if I gain everything? Do you see the shift? It's all about perspective. The same two words, what if, can either trap you in fear or launch you into faith. Let me tell you something. Every great person you admire had to answer that question. Every inventor, every leader, every dreamer had to face the what ifs. They could have stayed stuck listening to fear, but instead they chose faith. And that's why they changed the world. Don't let fear's what if rob you of your future. Start living in faith's what if. Start imagining the best case scenario instead of rehearsing the worst case scenario. Because the truth is, the worst case usually don't even happen. But if you never move, if you never try, you'll miss the chance for the best case to unfold. So the next time you hear that voice asking, what if you fail? Respond with boldness. What if I win? 8. Faith is a muscle. You don't just wake up with strong faith. You build it, you exercise it. Every time you face fear and keep going, your faith grows stronger. Stop letting fear work out more than your faith. Some of y'all been feeding your fear with doubt, negativity, and excuses. Start feeding your faith with prayer, belief, and action. Faith is just like a muscle. You don't wake up one day with it fully developed. You don't pray one prayer and suddenly have faith that can carry you through every storm. Just like in the gym, you got to train it, you got to work it, you got to use it. If you never lift the weight, the muscle stays weak. And if you never exercise your faith, it'll stay small. Here's the problem. Most people exercise their fear more than their faith. Think about it. Every day you feed your fear with negative thoughts, with doubt, with worry. You keep imagining the worst. You keep telling yourself why it won't work. That's like going to the gym and only working out your weaknesses. No wonder fear feels so strong. It's been getting all the workouts. Meanwhile, your faith is sitting on the sidelines, waiting on you to give it some reps. See, faith grows every time you use it. Every time you take a step without seeing the whole staircase, your faith gets stronger. Every time you pray and trust God, even when the situation looks impossible, your faith gets stronger. Every time you push past your fear and do it anyway, your faith gets stronger. When I first started out in comedy, my faith was small. I wasn't sure of myself. I wasn't sure of the future, but I kept showing up. I kept standing on stage. I kept believing that if God put this dream in me, He would make a way for it. And with every little win, with every laugh, with every open door, my faith grew. I went from believing God could help me through the night to believing God could carry me into a career, from believing God could feed me today to believing God could build me a future. That's how faith works. Little by little, rep by rep, it grows stronger. Now, the thing about building muscle is it requires resistance. Nobody builds strength lifting feathers. You build strength lifting something that pushes back against you. And that's the same with faith. You don't grow faith in easy times. You grow faith in the hard times. When you don't see the answer, when the money's short, when the plan falls apart, when you're scared out of your mind, but you trust God anyway. That's resistance. And every time you push through it, your faith muscle grows. Some of you have been asking God for bigger blessings, but you don't realize that bigger blessings require stronger faith. And the only way to get stronger faith is to work it out. That's why sometimes God allows challenges in your life. He's not punishing you, He's training you. He's saying, I need your faith to be stronger for where I'm about to take you. But if all you ever do is run from resistance, if all you ever do is play it safe, your faith will stay weak. And when the big opportunity comes, you won't be ready to carry it. Just like a muscle that never gets used, your faith will shrink. So here's a question. Are you exercising your faith or are you exercising your fear? Because whichever one you work the most will be the one that dominates your life. Start small. If you have to, pray bigger prayers. Take small steps toward that dream. Trust God in the little things so you'll be ready to trust Him in the big things. And when fear shows up and says, you can't handle this, just smile and say, that's okay, I'm in the gym. I'm working my faith muscle every day. Because one day you're going to look back and realize that the same things that used to scare you don't scare you anymore. Not because life got easier, but because your faith got stronger. 9. Walk by faith, not by sight. See, if you only trust what you can see, you'll never move forward. The Bible says it clear. Walk by faith, not by sight, because what you see today is not what God has planned for you tomorrow. Faith is believing in the invisible, trusting in the impossible, and knowing that the outcome is already written in your favor. One of the hardest things you'll ever learn to do is walk by faith and not by sight, because sight will fool you. Sight will make you think it's over when God is just getting started. Sight will show you the problem, but it won't reveal the promise. Sight will magnify the obstacle, but it won't tell you about the opportunity hiding behind it. That's why the Bible says walk by faith, not by sight. Because if you only go by what you see, you'll stop before you ever get to where you're supposed to go. Let me put it this way. Sight is limited. It only shows you what's right in front of you. Faith is unlimited. It shows you what's possible when you trust God. If I had only gone by sight, I never would have made it out of Cleveland. By sight, all I could see was poverty, broken dreams, and closed doors. By sight, I was a kid with no money, no connections, no way to make it big. But faith was whispering, Steve, there's more for you. Keep walking. And that's what I did. I walked when I couldn't see the end. I walked when I didn't have the money. I walked when I didn't have the plan. Because faith doesn't require you to see the whole road. It just requires you to take the next step. That's why people miss their blessing. They want the entire map before they move. But God says, if I gave you the whole map, you wouldn't need faith. I just need you to trust me for this step right here. Now, don't get me wrong. Walking by faith is not easy because sight is loud. Sight is screaming at you. You can't do this. Look at the bills. Look at the bills. Look at the rejection. Look at the failures. But faith is quiet. Faith says, keep moving. Trust God. The way is being made. And if you lean into faith long enough, you'll discover that the very thing that looked impossible by sight becomes possible by faith. I remember nights when I didn't know how I was going to eat. By sight, it looked like the end. But I had to keep telling myself faith, not sight, and somehow, some way, God always made a way. Maybe it was a friend who showed up with food. Maybe it was a random opportunity. Maybe it was a stranger giving me a break. But every time, faith carried me farther than sight ever could. You see, sight makes you depend on what you can control. Faith makes you depend on God's control. Sight says, I'll believe it when I see it. Faith says, I'll believe it until I see it. That's the difference. Some of you right now are stuck because you're waiting to see everything before you move. You're waiting for the money to be in the account. You're waiting for every door to be open. You're waiting for the whole plan to be revealed. But faith doesn't work like that. Faith says, start with what you have. Trust with what you can't see. Move even when the road looks dark. And as you move, the path unfolds. Think about it. When you're driving at night, your headlights don't show you the whole road. They only show you a little bit ahead. But as long as you keep driving, more of the road reveals itself. That's how faith works. God gives you just enough light for the step you're on. And as you move, He gives you more. So don't let sight stop you. Don't let what you see discourage you. Walk by faith. Trust that the God who brought you this far isn't about to leave you. He didn't bring you here to abandon you. He brought you here to grow you, to bless you, to show you what He can do when you choose faith over sight. 10 final word. So today, I need you to hear me loud. Fear is temporary. Faith is eternal. Your fear will fade the moment you act, but your faith will carry you for a lifetime. Don't let fear write your story. Let faith be the author of your life. You want the breakthrough? You want the blessing? You want the peace, the joy, the success? Then stand up today and declare, my faith is greater than my fear. That's when you'll see your life shift. That's when you'll see miracles happen. That's when you'll finally live the life God created you for.